20 minutes behind, which probably means that Austin Hill has started another company or something.
Hi, I'm Austin Hill. I have the distinct pleasure of being the president of a company called Zero Knowledge Systems. Kind of pride ourselves on knowing nothing, which is a unique aspect of, especially with this crowd. I think a lot of you have met kind of zero knowledge folk. There's enough of us here. They're really here just so if I do a bad job, they have to clap because their job is on the line. So I'm going to talk about my passion, and kind of really didn't plan out that much to say, and this morning and last night I was kind of thinking about how do I follow up on what has been discussed already, because there's been kind of this very impressive discussion over the last couple of days. And I saw Kevin Newman out this morning. He said, "Austin, have you figured out what you're going to say?" I said, "Not really, but I downloaded like half an hour worth of quotes of other people, and I'll just read that if I get into trouble. So hopefully we don't end up with that." I'm going to talk about kind of my passion, which is privacy. It's a topic that I've kind of heard brought up over the last couple of days. A lot of people have been mentioning privacy. Don talked about the internet and this whole idea of, anonymity and assuming this new identity. And these are things that are very true to my heart. This is something I deal with all the time. And I got into the privacy arena and kind of computers very early on. I started playing with computers. And I had this pleasure to disassociate my real-life identity from my cyber identity. I was maybe 10 years old. I was out using these bulletin boards. And all of a sudden, I was being judged on what I said, not who I was. Just kind of a fat, lonely, geeky kid in junior high school sitting in my basement. But all of a sudden, people had respect for me based off what I said. This was an incredible feeling of empowerment. I had a handle. I had a reputation. People knew me. I was respected. They never saw me. I made friends there that 10, 15 years later, I now meet, and it's the first time we've met face-to-face. And it's a really incredible thing. So I started thinking about the concepts of identity and privacy early on. And although I love technology, I kind of share some of the concerns that Bill brought up. I started asking, what are the values that we're implanting in technology? What are the decisions that we're making when we start to deploy these technological environments? And as much as I was excited about technology, I started to get really, really scared about the direction we're going. So I kind of took that to start a company and kind of build my passion, but also have somewhat become an advocate for asking these value questions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just kind of privacy, what my concerns are. Privacy is a basic human right. Okay. Article 12 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that privacy is a basic human right. We should all have it. But, how do we quantify that? I've done surveys where I bring 100 people in a room. I say, do you care about privacy? 85 people put up their hand. Take those same 100 people the next day and say, would you like a Big Mac in exchange for a DNA sample? Free. Everyone puts up their hand. So, this is one of the concerns. People love to give data away about themselves. Discounts, rewards, air mile programs. So we start talking about privacy, and I started looking at the big picture. What are we building? What are the threats? And I started to get really scared. We talked this week about mobile phones. I've got one, I think everyone does. How convenient they are. New generation of mobile phones that are being developed all have location tracking built into them. So as you walk around, your location is being broadcast. We heard an example this week about how great that was because a couple was in trouble. And we were able to get involved with the police and go out and help these people. Well, I've also seen a prototype of a different system with location tracking, which is a marketing system. So as you walk by stores, it sends marketing to your phone. So let's imagine this scenario. I'm walking by a pizza store. They look up my profile. Austin's overweight. Let's send him an ad for pizza. Austin, 10 paces back, there's pizza on discount, right? I don't want to live in that kind of world. I have no interest in living in that kind of world. London right now, 90% of all the public spaces in London are now covered by closed-circuit televisions. Okay? Steve Mann was demonstrating this. What's more important is these cameras are now being networked together, and they're being used with facial recognition. So what's possible now in London, I've actually seen demos of this, is they can pull up someone's picture from your driver's license, DMV, the worst pictures ever, which we all know, and they can just say, find me that person. And if that person is walking around in public anywhere in London, it takes around 10 minutes for their location to be found, based off facial recognition. We have databases now that know more about us than we know about ourselves. The HRDC database was in the press recently. 2,000 individual items about each and every Canadian. There's actually something like 32 million Canadian. I think they threw in some extra people there. 2,000 individual fields. How long would it take you to tell me 2,000 individual labels about yourself? That's a lot of data. And part of the problem, and I've heard this comment kind of come up in a few different times, is the fact that, this information age, and Bill touched on this. I don't believe in the information age. I believe in the knowledge age, and we're not in it. Okay, we're holding up information like that is a good thing. Computers are awful at knowledge. They can't do it. They're really good at information. That's labels. Is this person creditworthy? What is his age? Sex? Interest in sports? We have companies like DoubleClick, who sponsored the party the other night, who profile people on the internet. This is what they do. So I was over there drinking as much alcohol as I can, I felt I had to as a privacy advocate, send it to their bill. But one of the things I start to ask is, what are these labels? And when we start profiling, putting all these labels in computers, what happens is we push decision-making to these computers based off labels. Okay? Someone's creditworthiness today is not decided based off, I grew up with you in the small town, I know your family, I know you're trustworthy, here is credit. It's a computer. It comes out with a formula. What is your risk assessment? What do we know about this person? 72% of all data stored in credit reporting computers is inaccurate. It's known. It brings to rise a concept called data shadows. So Alan Weston, a very prominent privacy person, introduced this concept of data shadows, the idea of segmenting our identity, where all of a sudden the shadow, the data shadow that we leave through this computer world becomes more important than your real identity. Because more decisions are made based off the data shadow you leave than who you actually are. I think this is a kind of very dangerous trend. One of the things, kind of unique aspects of what I do, because we build really strong privacy systems, that actually so strong that the government at times doesn't like how strong our privacy is I get to deal with people like the CIA and the NSA, and they come knocking on my door saying, don't build it that secure. So one of the moral questions we deal with is, how good of a privacy system should we build? And so I kind of looked at for historical context, because a lot of people say, well, if you build absolute privacy, you're going to empower criminals. No one wants criminals. If you have absolute privacy, everyone will run rampant. And I don't necessarily have an answer for this, but I have looked kind of historically at this idea that should we have a concentration of power? Should we build in kind of backdoors into our infrastructure if we're going to build privacy into it? And I looked back and I started seeing things like, in World War II, the internment of Japanese Americans was aided by census data. It's supposed to be illegal. Government's not supposed to be able to use census data for any other purpose than just statistics. They used it to round up Japanese Americans. Okay? Hitler, one of the first things he did when he came into power was grab census data, and he started using that to persecute the Jews. He also used business records of all the Jewish business owners to find out who their customers were. So I start looking at these, context-wise, and I say, do I want to build a society? Do I want the technology we develop to ever get to that point? Imagine someone in power Hoover. He was really good at keeping files, and really liked his dresses, I've heard. So he kept files on a whole bunch of people. McCarthyism, at different times in history, people's individual rights have kind of been pushed aside in the interest of fighting a really bad thing. And one of the things I think is, as kind of a Western democratic society, we have a certain responsibility, because the technology we're developing is being deployed and brought to places like China, India, different countries where they don't recognize basic human rights. Think about what that kind of technology, the power to watch everyone's move, everyone's interest, and segment and target it to such a minute detail. What would that be in the hands of a dictator? Because on the internet, I don't look and pick up the New York Times. That's a relatively anonymous act. I might go right to a specific section. I might go and post in a news group about cooking kosher. And all of a sudden, that data might be used by my medical insurance company to decide whether or not I deserve insurance, because they're doing genetic profiling on certain racial subgroups to look at life expectancy. So how is this data going to be used? These are the types of consequences and questions I ask. And I am going to revert to some quotes, just because I did grab some good ones. In the 60s, Earl Warren, Supreme Court Justice in the States, talked about the fantastic advances in the field of communication constitute a grave danger to the privacy of the individual. This was back in the 60s. Think of everything that's happened since. We know about this problem. I like to think as kind of privacy is going to be kind of to the digital or information age, similar to what environmentalism was to the industrial age. At the time, you had all these companies saying, well, it's the cost of progress. Pollute the environment, cost of progress, we have to do it. We have companies today saying the same thing with regards to privacy. It's a cost of progress. You can't live in a shack. Everyone can't be Unabomber hiding out and being a Luddite. You have to exchange data. If you want credit, you have to exchange data. I disagree. We have choices. The technology exists today that we can build all the same convenience with privacy built in. We just don't choose to, because it's easier. The same way it was hard to build, good, environmental, friendly plants. We still have some choices on this. One of the consequences when I talk about privacy that people don't think about, and I think about a lot, is the concept of redemption, which I definitely need because I've made more than my fair amount of mistakes. One of the problems when we start recording and using these labels is the fact that with computers, we store these records forever. Storage space is really, really cheap. So conversations that used to be very ephemeral, would disappear after we had them, are now in the digital world. They're being recorded. Data, mistakes, comments. The 12-year-old who goes into a chat room and says, my parents put me on Prozac, makes me feel different. That's going to be there when he's 28 doing a job application. So a basic background search will pull up that posting. So the whole idea of just being separated from some of the mistakes, the lessons we've learned, is disappearing, because now these conversations, these data, are being put online where anyone can access them. And I think one of the biggest consequences, and one of the things that I think has kind of shown over the last couple days with the conference, or the biggest threats, is the whole idea of individuality. When I talk about privacy, I always talk about individuality, because I think that's what privacy protects, is the right to be different. Society hates to tolerate diverse people. This has been an incredible conference because of the diversity, the difference of opinions. I was exposed to things I just didn't think about, whether I agreed about them or not. And I think that's healthy. I think that's good. If you look in genetics, you talk about the dangers having homogeneous, strains. Wheat, a dominant wheat strain that gets planted everywhere, a single virus will wipe it out. I believe our individuality as a society depends on privacy. And, I found a really, really good quote on this one that I just had to pull out. What you have when everyone wears the same play clothes for all occasions is addressed by a nickname, expected to participate in show and tell, and bullied of any desire for privacy is not a democracy. It's kindergarten. I like that. One of the examples I talk about when you remove privacy is imagine junior high school lasted forever. It scares the hell out of me, especially if you knew me in junior high school. Not conforming is a very difficult thing. Certainly in our own education system, I think we encourage conformity. I think our current education system is an exercise in kind of rounding out any square edges and forcing everyone to be the same. But that's encouraged in any social situation. Were you popular? Do you wear the right clothes? Are you wearing the right brand? There's this kind of natural inclination that I want to be like that. And with the moves we're making in genetics, we now have that possibility. Within my lifetime, I believe we'll be able to choose the attributes we give to our children. 6 foot high, blonde hair, good pecs, six-pack. These are all things that are going to be possible. And I think we all, just through a natural inclination, want to give that to our children. I don't want my kid to be teased for being overweight. Should we? What are the values when we say that's going to be everyone? So these are the type of scary questions that I think privacy kind of brings to the forefront. I've got a bit of time? Okay. I'm going to talk about actually two last things. And actually, can we throw up the slide? So this is something that our company produced. It's a poster, it's an ad we ran. It sums up a lot of what I believe, just kind of in a single image. The idea of tattooing or identifying people and labeling them, I don't like that. And I like the empowering message. I'm not a pair of eyeballs to be captured, a consumer profile to be sold. I'm an individual. This isn't a message we tell each other enough. Be different, be diverse. And it's something we're trying to promote. We're certainly trying to put out technologies that offer it. But I think the social questions, the values when we go forward, is even more important. Just to go with that, I'm going to kind of end on 2 quick quotes. Civilization is the progress towards a society of privacy. The savage's whole existence is public, ruled by the laws of his tribe. Civilization is the process of setting man free from other men. That was Ayn Rand. I respect her. I think that was a really great comment. The last thing, and I'm just going to kind of leave on this and then read the quote. I think my identity is a lot more than labels. I think it's easy to associate ourselves with labels. I think when we talk about knowledge, wisdom, and move away from just information, we'll realize that our identity is linked to how many people's lives we touch and the experiences we have. And computers can't track that. Computers can't profile it. They can't categorize it. And so I think those are the type of values we need to be pushing towards our kids and to each other. And I think that was somewhat summed up best, and he doesn't talk about privacy, but I think it's very much intertwined, by a speech by Nelson Mandela, where he said, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were born to manifest the glory of God within us. It is not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." Thank you very much.